Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the ERTICO Partnership webinar series, Thought Leadership Journeys. It is a new initiative aimed to facilitate the thought leadership and expertise sharing between the ERTICO partners, the ERTICO stakeholders, and also the European Commission. The first episode today is focused on the EU mobility shift, navigating the transition pathway, and is based on the mobility transition pathway released by the European Commission in January this year, which is very relevant and important for all the ERTICO partners and stakeholders. I'm Ionita, a Partnership Development Manager, and I'm very happy to serve you all today as the moderator of the session, with the great support of my colleague Emil Berlin, who is working behind the scenes and making sure that the webinar runs smoothly and that everyone has a good access to the connection. Today we have a great lineup of 4 speakers, the industry leaders, also the representative from the European Commission. We have Joost Vantomme, the CEO of ERTICO, also Lorena Ionita, the Deputy Head of Unit for Mobility at the European Commission DG GROW, Stefan Deix, the Director of the European Council for Automotive R&D, EUCAR, and Dr. Stefan Dreher, Senior Manager at the ERTICO Innovation and Deployment Department at ERTICO ITS Europe. Today we have a fully packed agenda, which will provide you with a very in-depth overview into the mobility transition pathway, how ERTICO is contributing to it, and also it will be represented by Stefan Deix, the Director of EUCAR, from the automotive perspective, how the organizations and companies can contribute to the mobility transition pathway. Therefore, with all this great agenda and the lineup of our speakers, we will begin the presentation by Lorena Ionita. And before we dive, I just would like to brief you a bit of the house rules, the rules of the webinar. So all the attendees are at the moment muted. The webinar is recorded and will be shared with you afterwards, also the slides. And at the end of the webinar, after all the presentations, we will have the Q&A session. Therefore, please wait with your questions. And in the end, you can write your questions into the Q&A section in the Microsoft Teams systems. Therefore, I hope you will enjoy this webinar. It's a great webinar for the lunch break session. And Lorena, Ionita, I would like to pass the microphone to you to give a in-depth overview of the mobility transition pathway, a bit of context, and also I know that you want to present the call for pledges.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm happy to kickstart this webinar series of ERTICO with the transition pathway for the mobility ecosystem. I am the Deputy Head of Unit. We are of the Mobility Unit in DG GROW. And from the start, we can go to the first slide because I can make some context of the transition pathway. Just to say from the start, we can go to the first slide. Just to say that mobility, it means automotive, shipbuilding, maritime, and biking industry. We cover the 4 of them in our unit, but also in the transition pathway that I will present today. I will like today to focus on the implementation of the transition pathway. Indeed, we have been through 2 years of a co-creation process, and I will explain a bit more in depth what is it. But now we move to the implementation of the transition pathway. This is very much the focus today because we would like to inform you about the call for pledges, and we will very much like to mobilize you, all of you, your organization, to participate by submitting pledges to this exercise. This is very important. This is what what is the whole exercise about. It's not only identifying the actions through the co-creation, but is actually about implementation. Now, a bit of a background. What are the transition pathways? The May 2021 industrial strategy. So we have the first industrial strategy of this commission. It's from March 2020, basically a few days before the COVID broke out. And we have updated the strategy to learn the lesson from the pandemics in May 2021. And this industrial strategy from May 2021 launches transition pathway for 14 industrial ecosystems. We are one of them. Mobility is one of the 14 industrial ecosystems. So basically all ecosystems went through this process of co-creation with stakeholders. So our report has been published in January, and it's basically the fruit of a co-creation and cooperation with stakeholders from the 4 components I mentioned of the mobility ecosystem, whereby we have identified together with the stakeholders the challenges and the opportunities from the twin transition and from improving the ecosystem resilience, but also further actions which are needed to accelerate the green and digital transition and boost the competitiveness of the mobility industry. And you will see that the actions in the report basically identifies the actors who have to undertake this action, whether it's stakeholders, social partners, NGOs, member states, or the EU itself, and also the time frame, short-term, medium-term, or long-term actions. I think we can move to the next slide. So we have been through a process of 2 years of co-creation where we had roundtables, focused on horizontal themes for the 4 components of the ecosystem, but also individual roundtables focused on individual components, so automotive, rail, shipbuilding, and biking. And we have identified in our report, which we published in January, 112 actions grouped in 7 building blocks. And these building blocks are further grouped in 21 topics. And you will see, if you click on our call for pledges, that the actions we are asking for, it's around these 21 building blocks. So if you want to fill in the call for pledge, which is a EU survey, you will have to choose one of these 21 topics where you want to submit a pledge. So the 7 building blocks are horizontal issues. And by the way, these are also, the 7 building blocks are common to all ecosystems. So all 14 ecosystems have a transition pathway report, which goes around these 7 building blocks. On competitiveness, regulation and governance, social dimension, skills, R&I and technological solution, infrastructure, investment, and funding. And as you will see that many of the issues are very relevant for ERTICO, whether it's infrastructure, R&I, funding, of course, the social dimension, the skills. We can go to the next slide. Here it's an example of how the action look like. As I said, we have 112 actions, and I've put some of them here as examples, which can be relevant for ERTICO membership in terms of digitalization, automation, the innovation and infrastructure. So I will not read them for the interest of the time, but you see how it looks like and who the actors who should implement this are, whether it's industry, member states, or EU. And the time, MS, it's a member state in the column of actors. And the time frame, short term, medium term, or long term. Here we only have short term and medium term. We can go to the next slide. Here, just to go, so as I said, we have this 2 years of co-creation process. We have moved now since April into the co-implementation process. And here are the main milestones of the process, of the co-creation process, starting in, as I explained, in May 2021 with the industrial strategy. But then we also had the staff working document, which basically started a public consultation, which in the public consultation, we have asked the stakeholders whether the challenges and the opportunities and the actions we are identifying are enough, because our staff working document already identifies some of the issues. And then we had a number of roundtables, as I said, which basically are co-chaired with stakeholders. I should say that in this process, the Commission is just a facilitator. The protagonists are the stakeholders, and all the roundtables were co-chaired with the stakeholders. The Commission was really a facilitator, putting the stakeholders together. So this is the co-creation part. We have launched the call for pledges, and I will explain what is this about. And because I'm very happy to, if anyone in the audience is interested, to follow up to understand better how they can submit a pledge, what is all the context about. We are very much keen on engaging with bilaterally with any organization interested in our pledges. We can go to the next slide. So this is it has been published on 16th of April. Basically, who can submit a pledge? It's any business organization, any company, social partners, whether as trade unions or as employees, NGOs, local authorities, public administration. They can all submit a pledge. You will see it's under the format of an EU survey. So basically, it's a form that you have to fill in. I will maybe say a bit more into the next slide. If we can go to the next slide. Here, indeed, we have been through this process of 2 years, but now we have to make it happen. So we need to count on the commitment of the stakeholders to take part of the implementation part. Otherwise, I mean, we need to do this together. In terms of communication and outreach, basically, I will explain a bit how it works and how the Commission will collect the pledges. Why you should participate, what is in it for you to participate in such call for pledges, and how we will do the monitoring and the assessment. We can go to the next slide. Okay, first I should say, because there is no slide, or what is in it for you, what are the benefits for you participating in this call for pledges. Basically, if you want to showcase your action, whether ongoing actions, it doesn't have to be a new action starting now. It can be an ongoing actions which has results in the future and which can be related to one of the 112 actions identified in the report. And so you, if you participate, I mean, you can showcase and give an example and take leadership with your action that can be seen by other stakeholders. So you can be an inspiration for others. We can identify best practices, basically, from the actions put forward in the pledges, so that we can build a community of practice, basically. We can also build synergies, because you see projects of other stakeholders, so you can see that there could be some synergy between the actors in the value chain. We can also identify ourselves at the Commission further need for action. If we see certain pledges, we can say, oh, here maybe we should take some further EU action, whether it's in terms of regulation or it's in terms of more funding. So it also helps the policy making, if you want. And yeah, but it is a lot about communities of practice and about identifying best practices and showing the example. So how to prepare the pledge? You can read through the transition pathway report. It's not that thick, so I don't know, because I have a background, so you cannot see it. The report, yeah, you cannot see it because of my background. It's 50 pages document. You can look at the actions identified and then see how it relates to your strategy and your objectives. But what is important to know is that the pledges cannot be just statements or vague intentions. It has to be a concrete action. So there are a number of criteria we are looking at to be able to label it as a pledge. It has to be a concrete action. with a measurable target. So it has to be something which is quantifiable within a precise time framework, and with a clear link with the identified actions in the Mobility Transition Pathway Report, MTP. It stands for Mobility Transition Pathway. So as I said, for the moment, there is an EU survey, a form that you fill, but later on there will be a platform, a transition pathway stakeholder platform, which will basically be for the all 14 ecosystem, and where they could be, it's a one stop shop, if you want, in the whole transition pathway processes of all the ecosystem, and where there will be the pledges can be submitted. You can find partners there in case you want to discuss actions. There will be literature review, resources about what funding opportunities there are. So a lot of information basically in this platform, which will be launched as a pilot for the tourism ecosystem in the summer. We can go to the next slide. So this is you have the link here to the pledge. There is no real deadline, so we will. The call for pledges will be open on a rolling basis, and the pledges can be submitted anytime. However, we will publish these pledges in batches. So we want to publish the first batch of pledges by the end of the year. So it means that we have a cutoff date for. So we will publish the pledges submitted by 1st of September. But then Then we go to the second batch and everything, and so on. So you can do this anytime. Next slide, please. Oh, so these are examples of from the other ecosystems, because we have other ecosystems which are more advanced, where the co-implementation phase is going on for a while, and we can learn from that. And here, this is, for instance, a commitment from the tourism ecosystem, from the Costa cruises, and here they have pledges, basically quantified pledges about their waste and the water they use on the board and the alternative fuels they use. And we also have an example. Can you go to the next slide, please? From an association. This is the chemicals, and here what is important as an association, which groups several organizations, whether it's an umbrella organization of a trade association in Brussels or something at more local level, is something that the organization itself, so the association itself, can be accountable for. So it's not our sector will do this, and no, it's something. And here CEFIC has developed a study on the impact of the EU chemical industry on transport, and basically the CO2 emissions from transport of chemicals, and they have developed this monitoring tool themselves. We can go to the next slide, and I think we are getting to the end. Yeah, so as I said, maybe I should also say, because there was something on a slide about what we do with the pledges. As I said, we are not a letterbox. Basically, we will screen the pledges we received against the criteria I mentioned, concrete time frame, measurable targets, link with the transition pathway actions. So we will screen them against those criteria, and we will publish them, and then we monitor progress. And I should say that in the progress monitoring, we'll also include commitments and actions by the EU institutions themselves, because you'll see that the EU is also an actor there, which should implement some of the measures, and by the member states. So the member states and the Commission or the EU is not per se submitting pledges, because we have our own processes, and member states have their democratic processes, but it will be included in the monitoring of the co-implementation phase and actions to be taken by the actors. As I said, we are at the disposal of any bilateral meetings where we explain that to individual companies, to individual associations, in case you need more information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lorena. A great presentation. Thank you for your time today. And it was indeed very valuable and interesting for all the ERTICO partners and stakeholders to hear all this. We will share the slides with all the attendees later today. And if you have any questions, you can also reach out to us. And now we will move to the next presenter, to the ERTICO CEO, Joost Vantomme, who will provide an overview of how ERTICO as a public-private partnership is contributing to the mobility transition pathway with a multi-stakeholder approach. Therefore, Joost, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Agne. Hope you can hear me loud and clear and see me. First of all, thank you to everybody for being so luminously with us, 44 people. We will indeed, this is the first time we do that under my leadership this year. It's a premiere, so let's kick it off with this one. There will be many other series, not only webinars, but also podcasts, articles. Our role is to disseminate European policies, but also deployment of European things. And that's exactly what I see in the nice initiative of DG Grow, to which we were associated. And it's good to see that it's multimodal. It's not only automotive per se, but its own challenges, of course, but also waterborne. It is rail and actually cycling. And also very pleased to announce that we have a partnership with our cycling friends, Cycling Industries Europe, CIA, who joined ERTICO as an incoming new partner. So you will see much more data sharing and connecting the dots with that, I would say, active mobility segment. So going to the next slide, let me see if I can control the slides. Emil, otherwise you do it for me. No, I don't know how it works. Just wanted to highlight a bit what we do with ERTICO ITS Europe. European focused, of course, has been created by the European Commission, by Jacques Delors' cabinet in '91. So the early days of the single market, which is now 30 years, and actually linking all these dots with Grow, Move, Connect, and RTD as sparring partners in the Commission. It is linking 8 different sectors, which actually are very complementary. And some of the partners here present are belonging to these sectors. One is the traffic and transport industry. It's those who provide the physical and digital, I would say, road network, but also the traffic elements, for example, traffic lights, the smarter intersections, and that kind of things. Important industry, very important in Europe. Connectivity industry is definitely connecting the dots between the systems, not only vehicles and roads infrastructure and assets, but also pedestrians, and now also the cycling industry, for example. So we need connectivity, be it short range or cellular long range in our ecosystem. Service providers is a whole bunch of features. It is map providers, it's data providers, it can be cloud-related systems as well, inspection services such as type approval or service providers to the type approval system. So it's really spanning, it's service providers, as we say, so it's providing a service. Research is a big thing. A lot of institutions actually present in this call, but also it can be public-private institutions, very active in our research work for Horizon Europe, but also Digital Europe from DG Connect and CEF Digital from DG Move. Obviously, public authorities, quite a lot of them. It can be member states, ministries, but also agencies, road authorities, and actually regulators as well. So it all has to do with the public segments, including actually cities and regions. Yeah. Linking all that with the vehicle manufacturers, to my friends of LCA/EUCAR, who will come next in the row. My friends, they are indeed one of the elements, important elements in the road segment, for which this transition pathway is obviously of capital importance, and suppliers to that vehicle industry. It's a whole industry on itself, but all this cannot work without anything, without users on the left side. And the users, or not only the consumers, but the business users, happy also to have Avere as a segment in that user, so the electromobility segment, and also our friends of CIA, Cycling Industries Europe. So all this saying that what we do is really nicely fitting into the mobility pathways, I would say, and transition pathway. Next slide. And on the next slide, you can click through, it's a build-up. So actually, we claim ITS, Intelligent Transport Systems, but also services. It's not only about an ITS directive. but it's much more. It is about linking all these systems together, what actually the report is doing, the mobility pathway or the industry pathway. It's linking physical roads with vehicles. It's linking people with smart biking, for example, shared mobility services, actually automation, digital twins of the physical infrastructure, putting it in the cloud and using that information for activation of automated driving systems, mobility as a service, transport as a service, traffic management, drones, all this part also in the AI Act, for example, with some of it high risk qualification for traffic control centers. So all this we try to glue and to be the provider of knowledge, but also real tangible deployment. Which brings me to the next slide. It's actually talking about deployment. I want to connect the dots even in the quadrant. I would say we try to play music, and not only by individual instruments and silos coming from ecosystems to actually an ecosystem. I happen to be a musician, so for me that's easy, and others welcome on board, I would say, for all this. And on the next slide, you will then see how that works. It's actually a synergy with these 8 sectors, not only focusing on the product of that sector, be it a vehicle, be it a bike, be it a drone, or being a road, but how this product is being used in the ecosystem of mobility, actually what this report is saying. Using technology as a common denominator, I would say, linking all this to the user. For that, happy to co-lead more than 30 R&I programs, funded programs, projects, cross-border. But I want to go to deployment as well. It's not only about the projects, it's actually deploying, making Europe stronger in this ecosystem of ITS and mobility much larger. I think we're almost there. Nice slide. Next slide, sorry. And that I want to make a bit of publicity, linking that to maybe it can be a pledge. I don't know. It is a market radar that we do. We started this last year to say what is cooking in this ITS market. What are we talking about? What's the level of innovation? What's the level of employment, for example? And happy to send you that report afterwards with our team. We're gonna hyperscale this to everybody. But on the next slide, you will see the content, and that really nicely fits into the work of this pathways report. It is indeed, what are we talking about? What is ITS? What is data? What is AI? How does it work together? Is it the digital twin together with the physical roads? And how does it work? All the key trends and challenges, some of them are mentioned in the report. It can be geopolitical, geo-industrial, but it can also be about very concrete things about data sets. If you talk interoperability, you need to talk the same language, the same data, and the same spectrum, for example. It's a bit also what we say about market. What is the market looks like? What is the value chain? And what are the future evolutions of that market? Complemented with employment figures, facts and figures, but also the budgets that are being used for European funding in that sector. Definitely, we have to keep the finger on the pulse. We mentioned some challenges, quite a lot, by the way, but also solutions. It's not only about identifying problems and barriers, but also solutions. And that is actually in the report. Some of these solutions are regulatory solutions. Some others have to do with funding, some others with prioritization. You will see all this. It's actually nicely built upon what I read in the Pathways report. Next slide. And talking about challenges, these are a couple of challenges that we have found for these 2 sectors. We're going to broaden that to other sectors as well in ERTICO. But you see, it's about objectives that should be much more aligned. Awareness, usability, getting closer to the user, explaining what is technology and what is not. What is autonomous robot taxi or not? What is it not? And how can we use technology in a multifaceted way? So that's one of our key roles that we want to put forward. Stakeholder cooperation, not only about standardization, but much broader. And that's exactly what I want to do here with our partners. The next slide will then identify some of the solutions that we have identified, and either it can be standardization through the various standardization bodies, even regulatory standards, but also interoperability. The work we now do with EDIC, with the mobility data spaces and deploy MDS, but also in NAPCOR, is very instrumental for reaching that interoperability and all that data sharing environment. Next slide, finally. This is the focus that we do on deployment. I want to do much more than just research. It's about bringing TRL 9 levels both going forward into commercialization and making European happen in terms of traffic transport and mobility. All these nice logos, and indeed the Commission is the first one. So Lorena, you are on the left, first one. All these partners, and I would say ecosystems we work with, are really valuable for us. The same for our brothers and sisters of ITS America and ITS Asia Pacific, our counterparts with whom we have these worldwide congresses, for example. On the next slide, we do the same with industry associations. We see on the next slide then also who is in that ecosystem. It is, can you go to the next slide, please? We see basically the known people there, but some interesting things we do also in the logistics area, for example, or in the road segment area or urban mobility area and telecommunications area. So all this is actually focusing on real tangible deployment cross-border in Europe. And final slide is basically what we do with our platforms, also to bring value to all of you and to the Commission's mandate. It's all these platforms that have really the goal of deploying intelligent transport systems. Can be traffic management, but can also be automated valet parking or mobility as a service that we have started a long time ago, which is now floating as an independent platform supported and managed, co-managed by ERTICO. The same for TISA. And I also invite you to go through all these websites. You will be sending that, we will be sending that to you afterwards. Finally, the next one, all this brings us together and actually to listen to our colleagues of the automotive research sector, very important sector also from an economic point of view, membership of ERTICO and beyond. So I give the floor back to you, Agne. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joost. Great presentation. And indeed, it is obvious how ERTICO is well aligned with a mobility transition pathway, and that it's really working to connect the dots between the public authorities and also private industry while facilitating this transition. And here I'm already introducing our next speakers, Stefan Deix, the Director of the European Council for Automotive R&D, EUCAR, which will present the perspective of the automotive industry. And Stefan, I will give you the floor now. I'm just trying to give you the microphone. Also turn on your camera. Please let us know if everything works well, and then you can start. The floor is yours, Stefan.
Thank you, Agne. I hope you can hear me well, and I just continue to speak, and if it's not working, you will interrupt me. So yes, thank you to ERTICO and the team to inviting us to this webinar, and it's really an important item to talk about the transition pathways. So on the next slide, just let me briefly introduce EUCAR. EUCAR is the research association of the automotive manufacturers in Europe. And on the next slide, we have been contributing to the exercise of the transition pathways together with ASEA. ASEA was co-chairing the automotive parts in the transition pathways, and we contributed with the R&I recommendations in this exercise. As you can see, and stated by ASEA, the industry is quite important in Europe in terms of jobs, trade balance, R&D investments that you see here as well as part of the GDP and the tax revenues that are generated through automotive products. Let me briefly share with you the vision and mission of EUCAR on the next slide. So the vision of EUCAR is to provide freedom of mobility to all by safe, clean, efficient road transport solutions with benefits to users and society. And on the next slide, our mission is really to strengthen the competitiveness of the European automotive manufacturers through strategic collaborative research and innovation. On the next slide, sustainability. So sustainable mobility using energy and resource efficient technologies that target carbon neutrality over the full life cycle, addressing total cost of ownerships and increasing circularity. This is important because we want to strengthen the European sovereignty and the resilience regarding the technologies that we use, the materials that we need, and all the integrated value chains that are necessary for being resilient and for working in this domain. We do this for the battery technologies and the battery management system for electric vehicles, as well for the new technologies for materials for fuel cell systems. We substitute energy-intensive and critical materials in both BEVs and fuel cell electric vehicles, and we reduce the CO2 footprint of all the powertrains. Last but not least, and I think it was mentioned before in the sustainable mobility area, the charging solution. So the infrastructure is very important, and we work on a seamless experience for the user, looking at vehicle-to-grid technologies, and as well as how data is playing, particularly data-driven innovation is becoming important in the subject of electrification, looking at the contribution of the entire value chain, the life cycle of the vehicles, and to increase the awareness of value chain constraints and the performances. And on the next slide, you will see that this plays a quite important role when we look at circular economy. So circular economy, the 9 R's, where we are looking at the design of our products and systems and services for sustainability, looking not only at recycling, but all the different aspects that are important for the circular economy, at the materials and the components. And there we promote standardization, a set of tools defining performance indicators that help our industry to achieve the objective of becoming more and more circular. We look at the recycling loops, at the return facilities for the end-of-life vehicles, specifically the electric vehicles, and to establish an efficient uptake of these end-of-life vehicles, again, in the value chains, in the products, through recycling, reuse, remanufacturing, refurbishment, etc., etc. Now, the main goal in circular economy is, of course, that we want to decouple the materials from the fossil sources. So we need to as well look into bio-based products, for example, the bio-based polymers. Now, the more on the next slide, the more we go now to the digitalization of road transport, where obviously connectivity is playing a very important role there. And the connectivity is an enabler through the data sharing capacity, but as well looking at the software, the data, the future businesses, and the automation. I will say something on automation a little bit later. But when we look at new business model, connectivity and data is, of course, enabling us to look at new services, on-demand mobility, the vehicle as a service, and in general, new patterns of mobility that we can facilitate. So, and I think Joost already mentioned MaaS, and this is, of course, important when we look at the future vehicles as well. Now, when we look at automation, specifically at level 3 and level 4 automation, there we are currently looking at how we can have in the next half, in the next 5 to 10 years, more large-scale demonstrator projects where we involve users and society with concrete ideas and proposals how we can implement this as a European success story. So when we look at what is happening in the US or, for example, in China, and we need to really identify what is specifically the European approach. And this is connected to the next slide. And I think that safety is really a priority, and this is really something that is, from our point of view, something that we are taking very seriously. Safety is a key priority, and the safe system functioning, the robust functioning of all in-vehicle system is very important for us. But we need to as well look into accident statistics. We have seen over the past 10 years that it is more and more difficult and more challenging to further reduce accidents. And we need to have a very systemic approach to this, that we not only look at the vehicle, but as well the infrastructure, the road users, and the entire system, how we can achieve Vision Zero. And we need to look at the methods, assessment tools that we have there, and further look into digitalization, how digitalization is playing a role to derive further safety requirements and to help us to improve risk mitigation measures by increased knowledge and data collection on accident causation. When we look on the next slide, is a very hot topic currently is the software-defined vehicles. So in the future, software is taking a really very important role when we look about the vehicle operation. So software-defined vehicles will help us really to look into entirely new features. They play a very important role when we reshape future mobility, when we look at cloud integration, when we enable cross-collaboration with other industries that are looking into the mobility sector ecosystem beyond the current limitation of partnerships. Now, the ICT technologies that evolve usually in a different pace compared to vehicle development and product life cycles. So by decoupling advancements in software from hardware, we can accelerate actually the innovation drastically. So we align the views and the definitions with all relevant stakeholders in order to look into the development of standardized software building blocks, interfaces, development tools, validation tool sets that can help us to develop future software-defined vehicle in an ecosystem approach. We address these challenges for the EU automotive industry when we look at the open pre-competitive collaboration, the non-differentiating elements of the vehicle software stack. The software layers, the operating system, the middleware between hardware application, the cloud, including the interfaces, they all play an important role in this paradigm shift. But at the end of the day, and this is on the next slide, you will see the most important part is actually that we demonstrate that all the concepts that we're working on in innovation can be demonstrated and the feasibility can be demonstrated with the industrial relevance across the entire value chain. So that this is really something that for the EUCAR members is very important. All what we do in research and in innovation is really something we're looking into deployment, we're looking into the feasibility of all the concepts and to demonstrate that the things are working. We do this in the next slide. You see that we look at the vision and how we come from a vision to the projects at EUCAR. This very important is that we develop together a strategy, that we look for partners, that we look at the ecosystems that are actually developing the innovations and that help us to work together. And ERTICO is, of course, a very important partner in this. And together we develop the roadmaps and implement then the projects. On the next slide, you see that we are doing this together with different partnerships. So you see here, of course, you see ERTICO, but you see as well the CCAM Association, the Battery Partnership 2.0, the Hydrogen Partnership, AirTruck, the European Road Transport Research Advisory Council, and Business Europe. These are the organizations we are working and representing the OEMs in this regard. With this, on the next slide, I would like to thank again ERTICO for organizing this webinar, and we're looking forward to work with you on the transition pathway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for your great contributions and also for your willingness to continue our great cooperation that we already have while working also the implementation of the mobility transition pathway. And now I would like to invite the last but not least speaker of today, Dr. Stefan Dreher, the Senior Manager of the ERTICO Innovation and Deployment Department, who will present to us some of very interesting and relevant ERTICO initiatives that contribute to mobility transition pathway. Stefan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Agne. I hope you can hear me and that I can change the slides. No, doesn't seem to work. Okay. Yeah, so if you can change the slides for me. So I will dive now a bit deeper into the activities of ERTICO. So we are working at ERTICO with our partners and also with other stakeholders on a total of 25 funded projects today, and more are starting soon, and as well on 7 platforms. And these different projects and platforms are working on many of the topics that are being addressed by the transition pathways. So with the next slides, what I tried to do is to assign the different projects and activities we are working on to the individual topics of the transition pathways, but this should not be taken as a strict categorization, as most, if not all, of our projects are actually covering really many of the topics that were introduced at the beginning. So it's, as we just mentioned, I think, for example, here in this first case, there is a balance here between, on one side, the need and the importance of having a sustainable and competitiveness in the European industry, and as well the need to offer sustainable and affordable mobility solutions to all the citizens. So on one side, we need to develop and deploy efficient and affordable zero-emission vehicles. And here we have a series of projects from the 2.0 partnership, like ZEV-Up or Next eTruck. So ZEV-Up is developing an affordable and modular vehicle that can be used for both transporting passengers and goods. And Next eTruck is looking at innovation in powertrain, architecture, smart charging infrastructure, and management for trucks specifically. But it's not only about bringing new vehicles or technology, it's also about increasing the share and the adoption of new mobility solutions and shared mobility. So here we have some good examples of projects like SUM, Reallocate, or EBRT, which are working on increasing the modal share and the competitiveness of what we call novel shared modes, and as well in building local innovation ecosystems. EBRT is also looking at technology solutions for bus rapid transit to improve the performance of the EU urban bus systems. In order to achieve this, and in this process, it's very important that we exchange experiences and also try to replicate successful deployments in other regions. And projects, for example, like Solutions Plus, which is creating a toolbox and reference modes, is helping cities actually to replicate successful solutions, in particular related to e-mobility solutions in other cities. And then finally, as was already mentioned, with the Mass Alliance, we are in particular facilitating the deployment of mobility as a service and promoting a common approach to mobility as a service. On the next slide, I think this was also highlighted already by the previous speakers. So in order to accelerate the development of the software-defined vehicle technologies and as well of connected and automated vehicles, it's very important that they are safe, for all the road users, including the vulnerable road users. And also, it's important to communicate and inform the public about the impacts, the risks, and the opportunities that these technologies bring. So in order to support both policy and decision makers and to inform and demonstrate the safety to citizens, we need common assessment frameworks. The V4 Safety project, for example, is developing a prospective virtual safety assessment framework, which includes a large variety of safety measures. So not only in-vehicle safety, but as well infrastructure solutions and regulations that can all influence actually the road user behavior. More particular for CCAM, we need common safety assessment frameworks like the one developed by the Sunrise project, as this will accelerate the development process for connected automated vehicles. Finally, social aspects are key as well. So we need to ensure that the citizens embrace the CCAM technologies, and therefore we need to engage them from the early stages in the creation process for these solutions. The Sinfonica project, for example, is here developing strategies, methods, and tools to engage the CCAM users and assessing their needs, concerns, and expectations. So first results, for example, of Sinfonica have shown that that availability of transport solutions is still a main barrier for their adoption. And as well, the confidence to use digital tools is also still an issue. And then, as was mentioned by Stefan Deix, it's very important that we continue organizing large-scale demonstrations in order to assess the wider impacts of these solutions and as well to raise the awareness among the citizens. So we have some projects ongoing in that sense. So the Show project, for example, and now we have new projects that started like MetaCase, which is a cooperation between the CCAM Partnership 2.0 and as well the missions to develop and demonstrate zero-emission shared mobility use cases with the related infrastructure. On the next slide, I would just like to highlight, I mean, ERTICO has been traditionally focused on the road sector, but we are widening our scope. And I would just like to highlight one of our projects here, which is actually addressing the resilience of inland waterways. And that's the PLOTO project, which started in 2022. This sector is facing an important challenge these days due to a rising traffic and as well a saturated infrastructure. And here, by using digitalization, computer vision, machine learning techniques, remote sensing, the objective of PLOTO is to increase the resilience of the inland waterways by improving the hazard assessment and as well the decision making. On the next slide, the cross-sectoral innovation topic that is part of the pathway includes the data aspects and as well the support of the successful implementation of the mobility data space. And I think it was already mentioned by Joost, but ERTICO was involved in the preparatory action for the development of the mobility data space, so the PrepD space for mobility project. And ERTICO is also currently involved in the action that is developing the building blocks for the mobility data space, which is Deploy EMDS. So PrepD space for mobility has identified remaining challenges, and in particular here that there's still a strong need to break the silos. And beyond the mobility data space activities, we are working at ERTICO on many initiatives actually to develop harmonized tools and approaches to increase the availability and accessibility of data. So this includes a few examples. So NAPCOR, for example, the Federation of National Access Points, but as well we are sharing the data for road safety, which is aimed at creating a safety-related traffic information ecosystem through the collaboration between all the stakeholders. Then on the next slide, I think the pathway document also highlights that the EU mobility ecosystem depends on modern, innovative, efficient, and reliable infrastructure. So we have the EU policy framework, which is putting in place the recharging and refueling stations for alternative fuels. But then this can also be supported by several projects. So we have in particular the eCharge for Drivers project, which supports the development of the charging infrastructure, in particular by developing and demonstrating smart, user-friendly, reliable charging solution, because it's very important here to improve the user charging experience and by understanding here as well the needs and expectations from the users. Then we have projects like Podium, which is identifying connectivity enablers and needs for high-level automation, as it's very important here that we have a seamless connectivity that is reliable. We have projects like Guide, which is actually supporting the strategic deployment agenda for the European corridors on connectivity as well. Finally, for my last two slides, I would just like to, if you go to the next one, yes, I just would like to point out to two interesting resources and results, which are key priorities in the pathway. So the topic 6 of the pathway is about the importance of standardization, and that was also, I think, mentioned by Stefan Deix. I just would like to mention here that the CCAM knowledge base, which is meant to be the one-stop shop for all the activities related to CCAM in Europe and beyond, and that is currently being maintained by the FAME project, coordinated by ERTICO. So there we have just updated recently a list of standards and a section dedicated to the standards with the objective of better connecting research and development results, so results from actually EU-funded projects and national projects to the new standards, and as well to improve the collaboration between the standard setting organization in Europe and internationally. So there in this list, you have more than 180 standards related to CCAM at the moment that you can filter by technology domain, developing organization, and status. So you can access this knowledge base through the QR code, which is provided here on this slide. And finally, on the next slide, a last topic as well that has its dedicated topic in the pathway is the future of the working force. And I would just like to mention that we had a project running, which just recently closed, which is the We Transform project, which has developed action-oriented policy agenda to address and mitigate the impacts of digitalization and automation on the workforce. And this agenda will soon be published. So I put a screenshot here, so I will not go into details. So it basically looks into policy, governance, and regulation at EU level, but as well at the level of the industry, training and reskilling needs, and as well policy actions to minimize the workforce exclusion and exploitation. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you for this detailed overview of the relevant initiatives. And thanks to all of the speakers today, Joost, Lorena, Stefan, Deix, and Stefan Dreher. We will now start the Q&A session. If someone from the audience has a question, please feel free to press the button of Q&A at the top lane of the team system. And while you're generating the questions, I would like to ask the same question to all the speakers. If you could possibly identify what the main one opportunity for the public-private stakeholders, how they can cooperate in order to facilitate a mobility transition pathway. Joost, maybe we can start with you.
I like unprepared questions. Very good. So no, I give you one example on what we're actually doing, a bit beyond the data and connectivity stuff. It's automated valet parking. What is that? That is a self-parking car or truck, van, bus in the future. It takes 3 to tango for that. You need a vehicle that is equipped with the necessary sensors, cameras, and lidars and interpretation of the outprint, the physical outside. You need obviously a parking infrastructure, because it's about parking area. And for that, we have a partnership with EPA, so the European Parking Association, which is a different thing, but really we cope with each other now, even on standards and a NAPCOR. So that's the second thing. And you need definitely connectivity, be it short range, long range, or interpretation element. So, and that's actually what I want to deploy here in Europe. We do that. We have an ISO standard also in this. We have 2 standards. And work with DG Grow, actually the unit of Lorena, because EVP is one of the use cases mentioned in the automation driving systems implementing act, and we make it happen. We really make it happen in Europe, and that's one of the examples that we do co-creation of and pre-competitive co-creation with our partners. That's it, Agne.
Thank you very much, Joost. Lorena, what would be your opinion?
I think I can give an example of the clusters, and our report goes deeper into all the clusters and the partnership with it's a specific form of public-private partnership, and which are very important for SMEs, because we know that the green and digital transition is particularly challenging for SMEs, and having access to all this partnership, for instance, through the cluster, where you can get best practice, where you can get information on the funding, on the RNI solution. So I think on the cluster, and our report actually lists all the existing clusters and what they do and in which area they facilitate green and digital transition. So please have a look there.
Thank you, Lorena. Stefan, Deix, what do you think?
Well, I think it is important that in this huge transformation, I mean, the green and digital transformation we're in is not a small thing. And in this huge transformation, we need to as well understand the reality of the industry. So it is important that we, in order to transform together as a society, that we understand what is in it for the users, for the benefit for the society, but as well what is the benefit for the industry to be part of the transformation. And it is important that we understand how the value creation out of the transformation pathways can actually be an incentive to industries to participate and make this a success story. So this is really something that is quite important. Sometimes we hear, okay, we need to work more closer with the industry, with the users, with society. But in order for all of this to happen, we need to really better understand what are the boundary conditions, what is the framework that we're working in. I think that is very important. We are currently reviewing how we're doing that currently in the current framework conditions, and what we need to do better in the future in order to quicker accelerate the innovation process. This is not just about the R&I, but on how we move forward in implementing the innovations. And I was very pleased that Joost in his speech as well emphasized the necessity to look into that.
Thank you, Stefan. And I would like to ask our last speaker, Stefan Dreher, what would be your point of view?
Yeah, I would refer here to my favorite topic, which is about the sharing of knowledge, best practices, and lessons learned. I think here it's really important that we look at effective and efficient transitions that have happened somewhere else to try to replicate them. And for that, it's very important to share lessons learned. So not only positive ones, but as well negative ones. And as Stefan mentioned, it's important here to what can we do better? And for that, we need to see as well where we didn't do well, not only in our region, but as well in other areas. So.
Indeed, great. Thank you, Stefan. And I would like to ask if there are any questions in the audience. I don't see any question posted in our Q&A chat. And if there are still no questions, then I would like to thank again to everyone. And I would like to pass the microphone to the ERTICO CEO, Joost Vantomme, to wrap up this great session nicely and to share his final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. In particular, my team. So first, Agne as being the master of ceremony, I have to say. Emil, who turns the knobs, the buttons behind the scenes, and Stefan Dreher as well as senior manager on CCAM and related topics. A big thank to Lorena from DG Grow from the Commission. Really nice teamwork. And we will definitely contribute further to this. And let's see in what shape we can do that with your team. Yeah, and greetings to Mark, Niklas, and the team. And Stefan Deix, my colleague and friend of EUCAR/ACL. Thank you for representing the automotive industry. I saw a lot of traction in terms of participants from various areas, the vehicle industry, but also much beyond and much broader, which emphasize actually the relevance of this report and the exercise. It's not just a tick the box exercise, but it's like the textile industry that goes through massive transformations. Like other industries, we have the mobility industry, which is a big one, I would say, in terms of GDP contribution, research, and physical contribution in Europe. Which means that all what we discussed is really relevant, and even more relevant that it stays awake for ERTICO, our partnership here in Europe. On the final slide, you will see that we will showcase all what you said in our congresses. And these congresses, and this is not publicity, it's hard reality. The ITS World Congress is coming up. It's in Dubai because ITS is, we are representing Europe in Middle East and Africa. So this time it's the Middle East representing all of us. We will be there with around 15,000 people in September. And I can only say there's a lot of traction from the public side, also from the Commission colleagues there, but also our colleagues in the ITS America, Asia Pacific, Australia, and beyond. So all this, and on the next slide, you see what we have in store for you there. There will be a high-level summit with mostly ministers and mayors on the mobility, the future of mobility. A big topic from the 3 regions, and that is interesting. So we actually will see this, the transition pathway, how it's being done in the US, Asia Pacific, Canada, and below. So welcome. I would say you're all welcome to that. We will send you all the details afterwards, what's happening there at that Congress. There are more than 300 papers that will be presented in special interest sessions, high-level sessions, and obviously also an exhibition next to the, I would say, next to the Congress and scientific evidence. Which brings me to the end. Thank you again to everybody. And Agne, you have the final words on this one, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you all who came to listen to us today and took your 1 hour during your lunch break to learn all these amazing insights. Thank you very much to all the speakers today, Lorena, Joost, Stefan, and Stefan. This was just the first inaugural episode of the ERTICO Partnership webinar series, Thought Leadership Journeys. Therefore, follow the ERTICO news at the ERTICO newsletter, the e-blast that we send out, also the ERTICO podcast, and all of our social media channels where you can really find out what is happening at ERTICO. As mentioned already, all the slides and presentations will be shared with the attendees of the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or my colleague Emil, and I wish you a nice day. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.